Hello, my name is Dr. Greg LaPoint with the Center for Natural Law. The classic definition of philosophy is the love of wisdom. It is the search for what is called truth. Philosophy finds explanations for the created world and for how human beings should live, how we should organize our lives and society. Philosophy explores human institutions, examines human values, and discovers meaning and purpose for people and cultures everywhere. For example, let's make a comparison. The natural sciences study physical matter. Biology studies living matter. This includes plants, animals, and human beings. Chemistry studies chemical compositions. Physics studies objects with mass and motion. Where philosophy is a deeper, broader, systematic study of human interaction, social conventions, and human institutions. So where does philosophy begin? Philosophy studies the world of things, that created world that surrounds us, because the natural order is so abundantly obvious. Human beings are part of the natural order. We seek an understanding of this obvious reality. This search for explanations, the search for purpose of everything, for human values, for knowledge and practical wisdom, all start with the observation of the natural order. Observation of what we can perceive, comprehend, and think about. We start by looking at the world around us, at existing things, including human beings. Philosophy requires an unbiased observation and approach to the created things that we find in the natural order. The fact of the natural order is so indisputable is why we start there. This is the starting point. There is a deep reservoir of potential knowledge available to us simply by examining the created world and by directing much of our observation to the amazing subject of humanity. The world of things invites us to acquire knowledge about ourselves. We can reason from the things we observe in the natural world. We can abstract out ideas about human activities. These ideas then lead down the road to acquire even more knowledge about the human race. When we develop these ideas about creation and creatures, we must be accurate. Human beings are capable of distorting or misrepresenting the truth. But even more importantly, we are capable of arriving at truth. We can get it right. There is such a thing as right reasoning. When we embrace sound ideas, this leads to good consequences. When we embrace misleading or faulty ideas, this then leads to bad consequences. Here are two examples. In the 1800s, the concept of utopianism generated great ideologies, such as Marxism, fascism, and Nazism. These bad ideas led to terrible consequences. Millions of people were killed. By comparison, Mother Teresa had the Christian idea of serving the poor, so she moved to Calcutta, India, and worked with the poor for her entire adult life. Ideologies or pipe dreams have bad consequences because they are based on unsound reasoning. Accepting a lie will result in behaviors and activities that reflect that lie. Since a lie is a distortion of reality, so too the resulting activity will be a distortion, but in practice. So what is truth in human reasoning? We start with the understanding that philosophical realism is where human reasoning begins, because the idea in my mind must correspond to an independently existing reality outside of my mind. A false substitute to sound reasoning would be to embrace an ideology or to forfeit our better judgment for subjective preferences. That is, trade truth for fiction. Let's talk about our intellect. Most modern philosophers will not understand the intellect in the same way as the philosophical realist does. As mentioned, human reasoning is supposed to correspond to reality. We know that reality exists all around us, but many modern philosophers want to put limitations on our ability to know reality and therefore to know the truth. Many modern philosophers focus on subjective reasoning, that is, on the isolated individual who is engaged in private thinking, instead of focusing on the independently existing reality outside our minds. The approach of the modern philosopher is highly problematic. In fact, modern philosophy makes sound human reasoning impossible. We have 5 external senses: sight, touch, hearing, taste, smell, all of which have direct contact with reality. So our first point of contact with reality is through our 5 senses. These 5 external senses send information to the mind, where our internal senses assist in the process of learning. These internal senses are our imagination and memory, among others. Now this produces an image in the mind. The active intellect abstracts out or pulls out the idea or entity of the thing from the image. The passive intellect then stores this idea in memory. So in summary, the active intellect impresses on the passive intellect the identity of the thing that we learned. So this is the rational process. The mind takes a sensory image, abstracts out the identity of the thing in the form of an idea in the mind, and then that concept we experience or we express in language. Language is evidence that we can acquire knowledge. Language refers to classes of things. Classes of things like dogs, trees, boats, people, and sports, etc. Language refers to these concepts and ideas of real things. Human reasoning can then draw out meaning and further implications from these concepts to make connections to other knowledge we have. On the side, let me mention that humor and laughing, just like language, also requires the faculty of human reasoning. Humans express humor, and we laugh. We see funny inconsistencies and paradoxes in life. These 2 human capabilities, language and humor, point to the fact that we are unique intellectual creatures. So in summary, this is how we take in knowledge. By establishing the idea by simple understanding or apprehension. This is the first step in the intellectual process. The second step is called judgment, where we compare and combine together statements about ideas. The third step is reasoning that joins judgments to arrive at a new conclusion, new information. This intellect is a spiritual power and also happens to prove the existence of a spiritual soul. One of the first things we can observe about the world around us is that there is change. Things are evolving. Things are in motion. Life is dynamic. We talk about these terms, potency and act, to describe this. We talk about change. Change is evident to us in the world as it evolves. We are aware of how people can change. We can learn about things, adopt new attitudes, new feelings. We can review who we were in the past and who we are today. We are aware of our abilities to adapt new ways. Even non-living things change. Both non-living and living things change. The planets move. Plants grow. We are born. We grow. We learn new things. We develop in life, yet eventually we pass away. The sensible world is in constant flux, yet the intelligible world is stable. There is stability to reality, then there is potential for change joined with this stability. So stability and change are not incompatible. They are compatible. Stability and change can coexist. We can become different people, whereby we start one way but can end up in a different way. So in change, something remains the same while something else changes. For this to occur, there must be what is referred to as a substratum, some permanent stable base. And then on top of that, a superstrata is present, something that is potentially changeable. There is personal constancy, yet potential to receive new perfections, new features, and new positive qualities. This is called potency and act. That is, potency and actuality. Potency in human beings includes achieving virtue. When this potency becomes actuality, the person becomes different. Persons can become qualitatively better, improved, more dignified, more genuine. People can become more capable. For example, we can set and achieve positive personal goals. Think of these as relational skills or virtues, or consider them as an acquired personal excellence. This is to say, we can become more friendly, more objective, prudent, more honest, resourceful, appreciative. We can become more diplomatic, more efficient, humble, more supportive, more cooperative, better listeners, or other character improvements. We should all have some goals that we are trying to achieve. If we are working consistently to improve ourselves or our communities, this will always improve relations between other people. It'll bring peace, a sense of fulfillment, and accomplishment. Lifting ourselves and others towards a higher level of dignity and flourishing is our challenge and our calling. See you next time.